So part of our work in repatterning the breath is coming to the place where we can bring breath back up into the chest and the heart. And as a result of that, people see this dramatic increase in vitality, in joy, in oxytocin, in love, just by breathing up into the chest and the heart. Now, again, I can ask you to do that, and you can probably take one or maybe a couple breaths up into the chest, right? To really bring life force energy into the heart space. Okay, we're live here on Instagram, here on Facebook. Here is up on the podcast for YouTube, and then of course you can follow along on any of the places that you find podcasts. But for those of you tuning in live, thanks so much for being here. Today, I want to talk to you about breathwork and relationships. Now, most of you know me as a relationship coach, but one thing that you might not know about me is that my career started as a nervous system specialist. I had a clinic in Vancouver, Canada, and I ran a breathwork clinic there. It was the first breathwork clinic in Vancouver, and I worked with 25 patients per week, 5 patients per day, 5 times per week, holding them through really deep, intimate, powerful breathwork experiences. And since then, I've taught trainings, and we've actually got an upcoming training coming up here in Bali. It's a 6-week training to become a certified breathwork facilitator. So if that's something that your spidey senses are going off a little bit around and you're like, wow, that might be interesting to try for myself, believe me when I say this, there is no deeper process that I can take any human through than this 6-week training that we have coming up in Bali. So if you've ever thought about becoming a breathwork practitioner, this is the most comprehensive training I can take anyone through. It's incredibly deep. You're going to be dropping into a really deep breathwork practice 4 times per week. You're also going to be learning how to breathe other people and learning how to repattern breath and learn all about ceremony. I touch more on breathing mechanics and the science of breath, which I'm going to get into today, which is mind-blowing. Stick around to find out a little bit more about how breath can change your life and change all of your relationships, including your marriage, including your long-term relationship, and including your relationship to yourself. So when if you're interested in that training, I'll put the links all below, or you can find them on my Instagram account. But as for today, I want to talk to you guys about breath and why I think it's important and how you can apply this in your marriage or in your relationship. Because having the background as a nervous system specialist and working with thousands of clients, literally thousands of people, I've taken through really deep processes of repatterning their breath and changing their life. People would typically do 5 sessions with me to start, and people might come in with any number of disorders or problems, and that be problems with themselves or in their relationship, and it might be depression, it might be anxiety, it might be poor sleep, it might be poor relationship, it might be low energy levels, it could be any number of things, not living their purpose. By week 3, 4, or certainly by week 5, it would blow my mind, because the same thing would happen every time. Is people would come in and they'd say, I'd check in and say, hey, how are you doing this week? And they would say to me, Brady, I have no problems. My life is just in a constant state of flow. And I would always kind of chuckle to myself and be like, oh, is that right? Well, tell me a little bit more. But I started to realize this was a common theme. This was happening for a lot of people. when they would come and do sessions with me, and not many. Like, I'm talking 3 sessions, 3, 4, or 5. By 5, everyone got there, but even by 3 sessions, people's lives dramatically changed. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to access some of that today in this specific breathwork practice that I teach, and how you can have that happen for yourself too, right? Like, if you're wanting more flow in your relationship, if you're wanting more flow in your business, if you're wanting more flow in the way that you wake up in the morning and you feel the day meet and greet you, if you want to feel connected in relationship to that, breath is a great place to start. It's not the only way, but it's certainly, for me and for a lot of people that I've witnessed and taken through this practice, the most powerful, easiest way to rewrite your relationships of all kinds. So I'm going to break it down for you. There's 3 basic ways that you relate in relationship, and I'm going to go through all 3 of those ways. Okay, are you ready? Buckle in, buckle up. Here we go. Number 1 is the way that you think about your relationship. Right? The way that you think about your relationship. So this is talking about mindset. What is the phrase? What is the sentence? What is the terminology that comes to mind when you consider your relationship to something? It could be anything. It could be your long-term partner, or it could be yourself, or it could be your work that you're engaged in. It could be your home and living environment. What ways do you think about that? Now, when we think about thinking, it happens in language. It happens in language. So it's the ways that we talk about things. Right? So ask yourself, how do you think, or how do you talk, either out loud or silently, about your relationship to things? Right? Now, what's fascinating is in breath, we start to repattern neural pathways using this specific practice that I teach, right? And so this practice that I teach is a gateway into opening neural plasticity. So right now, if I ask you to change your breath, let's do that together now. Let's take a breath in through the nose, make it long and deep into your belly. Hold that for a moment. Just pause, hold that breath, and then slowly exhale through the nose all the way, and then hold that for a moment. Hold that all the way out for a moment. And what you'll start to notice is your palms are probably a little warmer, maybe even sweaty. You've got a little more saliva in your mouth right now. And that's because just in this one single breath, you've changed your physiology. And you've changed your blood chemistry. And you've changed the way that you're thinking about the world, or about me, or about whatever you're tuning into right now. You've changed the way that you're relating. And this is one simple breath, right? You take 26,000 breaths every single day. So it's a lot of breaths. And most of those breaths you're not thinking about, and I'm not directing you to breathe in a certain way. So what's powerful in this particular style of breath that we teach is that we access neuroplasticity, meaning in one single session, 60 to 90 minutes, we've rapidly repatterned the way that your subconscious breath occurs. So this is the 26,000 breaths that you take all day long that you're not thinking about, or maybe 25,999 because I made you think about that one breath. But all those other breaths that you weren't thinking about, they have a particular pattern, right? And that pattern is being reinforced continuously. And that's changing the way that you think about your relationships in any given moment, right? So that's number one in your relationships, is the way that you think about it. And we can change that consciously, although the conscious mind changes things much, much slower. When we actually tap into the subconscious mind, like we do in ceremonial breathwork practice, like we have in our training that's coming up in February, you learn how to tap into the subconscious mind, and then it's done in a 60 to 90 minute long session. And you can actually, as a breathwork facilitator, do this for other people as well. Imagine the gift that you could give to your partner, your kids, the world, if you could help them repattern the way that they think about relationships. So that's number one. Number two, the second way that you relate in the world, whether it's this relationship to your partner or to yourself or to your work or to your environment, the second way that you relate is the way that you feel. It's the way that you feel, right, in any given moment. Now, we have access to thinking much easier than we have access to feeling, most of us. So just notice that right now you're probably thinking and listening, and you're like, what do I think of this guy, and how am I interpreting the information, and I might be thinking about how am I applying that to my own life, and all kinds of thinking. Now, if I ask you, how do you feel about this conversation? Maybe you're relating to me as you're listening to this right now. How do you feel? And that's much more curious to me, because that, and as we see in our breathwork trainings, that is where the real gold is, right? We've kind of de-armored that layer of thinking to get to the layer of feeling. Now, some people are like, well, I feel joy, or I feel sad, or, those are emotions, and those are nice to identify. I like to go a layer even deeper than that, into how are you feeling in terms of sensation in your body. So for some people, like, this can be even a deep practice to really just notice the sensations of their body. And the reason for that is because most of us as humans, all of us as humans, are really good at avoiding pain, right? So typically we're not feeling the discomforts of the body, right? We're not feeling the body until it's screaming at us, until we hit our toe on the desk, and then we feel the pain, and we're like, ah. And most of us, that's the way that we relate to our bodies, is through pain, because that's the times that it's screaming at us. But at any given moment, there could be millions, trillions of different sensations that you could be feeling. And some of them actually feel really good. So just for the sake of not taking you into a full somatic experience right now, but for you to get a taste of this, I want to invite you to feel into a sensation that feels good. For me, it's like in my office right now, it's all windows, and I actually had to put up a curtain because the sun was beaming through, so bright and so hot. But it feels nice. It feels nice when the sun hits your skin. So if you tune into a sensation right now that maybe feels good, notice that you could feel into some discomfort. You can also feel into maybe something feels good. Maybe it's just the tongue on the roof of your mouth. Or maybe it's the way that your sit bones meet the earth or the chair that you're sitting on. Or maybe it's the breeze on your skin, or maybe it's a breath of fresh air. Now, how does this relate back to breath work? Well, because our breath is, I teach breathwork trainings, and I have a clinic for breathwork, but really what I'm working with isn't so much your breath, although that's the gateway into what I'm working with, but really what I'm working with is your nervous system. And your nervous system, it's a complex system, but it's also really simple, and it works like this. You have two different directions that you can invite your nervous system into. One is upregulation, right? If you take a big in-breath right now, your heart rate's going to speed up. You're going to excite your nervous system. Upregulation, right? Now, if you take a full exhale, through pursed lips, blow it all out. Keep blowing. Hold. Stay empty. Stay empty. Stay empty. And slowly breathe in through your nose gently. You might notice down regulation. Right? Parasympathetic tone is the technical term. But this down regulation is your heartbeat slowing down. Right? So the nervous system, it goes up or it goes down regulation. Now, in order for us to feel more in terms of sensation in the body, we've got to get past the mind, right? And when things are fight or flighty, like fast heartbeat, I'm like ready, prepared to fight, whether that's in your relationship or at work or just like day-to-day life, if you're in a state of flight in any way, you're probably upregulated, right? So the practice to get past that thinking, to get past the fight or flight state, is to not make that wrong, because it serves an incredible purpose for getting us up and keeping us out of traffic and moving us to the gym and just keeping us like moving forward in life. Not making that wrong, but also inviting a strengthening of your parasympathetic tone, or a strengthening of the down regulation ability within your nervous system. Now, when we get to that place of feeling down regulated, our ability to sense sensation becomes more readily available. Okay, so if you're having trouble sensing, feeling like sensation in the body, see what it's like to down regulate. And of course, this is what we teach in our breathwork training, is how to up and down regulate, but not just like in the moment. We can do that, like we just did that a little bit, right? We did a little bit of in the moment up and down regulation, and it happens really quick in a single breath. But that's not long lasting. See, because you have a subconscious breath pattern. Again, 26,000 breaths per day. Every single one of those breaths are typically a deeply ingrained pattern that's being reinforced 26,000 times per day. So your window of tolerance, or your area of feeling comfortable, is typically perpetual, meaning it's chronic, it's happening every day. So in order for you to get to those deeper, softer, more vulnerable places where we can learn insight about ourselves or about our partner or about the way that we feel and relate in the world, we need to access that on a longer term, more sustainable, in a more sustainable way. And doing something like breathwork practice that is like the type of breathwork that I teach, is something that will be long lasting. You know, people would come into my clinic and they'd be on their third or fourth session and they'd say, I have no problems anymore. My life is in a constant state of flow. Why is that? It's not because I gave them in the moment, take one big breath up or take one big breath down. It's because we went deep into repatterning their emotional state and their ability to create comfort in either more upregulation or more downregulation. And that's dramatically going to change the way that you relate and feel in all of your relations. Okay, number 3 of the most important ways that you relate in the world, right? And again, this can be for your long-term relationship, this can be for a partner that you're seeing short-term, this can be for your dog, your living situation, your job, your friends, your family, the way that you relate, right? Number 3 is the way in which you behave, right? The way in which you behave in the world dictates the ways that others see you. And it also becomes the way that you are in the world, the way that you act in the world, right? is based upon your behaviors. Now, most of our behaviors are subconscious. And that might be pretty sobering for some people, because most people think that they're really aware of their behaviors. And you're likely aware of some of your behaviors, but most of your behaviors are subconscious. Now, subconscious behaviors show up in all kinds of different ways. And in fact, breathing itself is a behavior. So I can behave in certain ways, right? If I behave like I'm a kind of buffoon and I'm jumping on the table during dinner and, like I'm jumping up, like that's a behavior, right? If I'm choosing to be more quiet and reserved in social situations, that's a behavior. Right? But on a more subconscious level, there's behaviors that are happening like breath. Now, this is by far the most interesting part of this whole conversation, is if breathing is a behavior, and behavior changes the way that others see me in the world, and behavior changes who I am in the world, what happens when I change my breath? And specifically, what happens when I change my breath on a subconscious level? So it's really deeply changed and being reinforced 26,000 times per day. Okay, let me give you an example of that. So some people, and we teach all of this in our breathwork training, some people will not be breathing down into their belly. They're not utilizing their bottom two diaphragms. You've got one diaphragm that sits just below your rib cage. You've got another diaphragm that sits around your pelvic floor. So it's just around the top of your pelvis. It's a series of muscles, and it presses downward, similar to the diaphragm around the rib cage. It presses downward. Now, what happens when it presses down? Yeah, it opens up to make more room for the lungs, but underneath that is even more fascinating. Because underneath the diaphragm, underneath the lungs, you have your liver, you have your gallbladder, you have your spleen, you have your kidneys, you have your adrenal glands, you have your stomach, you have your intestines, big and small, you have your sexual organs, right? So all of that is either being stimulated, blood flow, chi, moving to that area 26,000 times per day, or it's not. And if you are not stimulating your intestines, you're not moving digestion, you're not processing the food that you've digested, if you're not breathing down into your sexual organs and stimulating that area, if you're not pressing and breathing down into your adrenal glands and your kidneys that regulate your blood chemistry, that's going to have a profound effect, especially if it's happening 26,000 times every day. Right? These are profound, profound effects. So this is why something like a breathwork training, or just being a client of a breathwork facilitator, is so profound, because we can repattern that. Right? I can ask you to breathe down into your belly right now. Most people can try to do that, but then what's going to happen is they're going to revert back to their subconscious breath pattern. So what we want to do is repattern that in a way where we're actually looking at, okay, why is this person not breathing down into their belly? And when did that start? And how can we unwind some of that emotional turmoil or potential trauma, right? So this is where we get into some pretty deep work in these trainings, is we're actually unwinding somatically traumatic events that have occurred and shut down breath in particular areas of the body. So I'll give you another really cool example. Another area that someone can be shut down in their breath, we see this a lot when someone's gone through a heartbreak of some kind, is up into their chest, right? And what ends up happening in their body is their shoulders roll forward to protect the heart, and as a result of that, we stop breathing up into this area. And if we stop breathing up into this area, well, now what's not being massaged and stimulated is the heart space, right? And if that happens, if we have a long enough slow heartbeat, or more of a down-regulated state, we get depression. So part of our work in repatterning the breath is coming to the place where we can bring breath back up into the chest and in the heart. And as a result of that, people see this dramatic increase in vitality, in joy, in oxytocin, in love, just by breathing up into the chest and the heart. Now, again, I can ask you to do that, and you can probably take one or maybe a couple breaths up into the chest, right? To really bring life force energy into the heart space. Unfortunately, what's going to happen is, after you're not thinking about changing that behavior, breath is a behavior, changing the behavior to breathe up into the chest, you're going to revert back to what's called your subconscious breath pattern. And if you've experienced heartbreak of any kind, there may have been an absence of breath up into the chest and the heart. And so coming into a training, we can start to teach you how to understand the body, understand the breath, understand behavior, and repattern some of that stuff on a subconscious level. And of course, this is much easier said than done. There is a science to it. There's a formula. If you follow the steps, you follow the formula, it will happen, I promise you. And it's for people who are committed to the work, right? It's for people that are I'm ready to go deep into myself, to create openness, to create expansion. I want to drop into a very, very powerful circle and learn from some incredible teachers. So those are the 3 steps to understanding your relationship: the way you think about it, the way you feel about it, and the way you behave in your relationship, okay? All of that can be related back to the way that we're breathing, right? The way that we're breathing. And the way that we're breathing can rapidly be repatterned through this particular breath practice. Now, if you want to find out more about this breath practice, find us on Ceremonial Breathwork. That's our Instagram page. On there, you can find our website. We've got more details about our 6-week training coming up here next year in February for Bali, in Bali. This is going to be, I kid you not, the deepest experience that I can take any human through. And I'm doing it with my wife. She's a total ceremonialist. She's teaching all about ceremony. I'm teaching more about breathing mechanics, the science and the neuroscience and the endocrinology of breathing, and how it changes the way that we relate to this beautiful, beautiful world. I would love for you guys to be a part of this. I would love for you guys to come to Bali to experience the lifestyle, the ceremony that's available here, and learn from some of the best teachers in the world about breathwork. It's a 6-week training. I kid you not, your whole life will absolutely change. I've done this training before for other students, and their lives, the whole trajectory of their life, their career, their relationships, their insights, the way they relate to themselves, all of that shifts so dramatically. And it's kind of like life before breathwork and life after breathwork. So it's been the greatest investment that I've ever made. If you're interested, go check us out, Ceremonial Breathwork. I would love to chat with you, share some more details about the training. And thanks so much for tuning in. I'm sending so much love to you guys, and we'll be back next week for another podcast episode. If you missed some of this and you want to find out some more, go jump on the podcast anywhere you find podcasts. It'll be out in a couple days. And if you want to watch and tune along for the live with the video, go to YouTube. It'll be out there in a couple days as well. And I'll post this to my Instagram. Love you guys lots. Thanks again for tuning in.